In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? The genre of our 2-minute opening is a psychological thriller, so I did some research into the typical conventions of psychological thrillers. The first convention is that the film tends to have a heavy focus on one character. It usually will follow this character throughout the film, possibly unravelling a chilling story attached to them. Number 2, psychological thrillers usually have elements of mystery or drama and often jump into the drama genre. Number 3, psychological thrillers tend to include elements of horror and also switch into that genre. Number 4 is suspense, and number 5 is cliffhangers. It is common that psychological thrillers will have a twist or unexpected ending and leave the audience questioning what will happen. Number 6, the majority of them include some type of mind games or psychological problems. Number 7 is low lighting or no lighting. And number 8, lastly, fast edits are used to create the feeling of panic and fear. There is also stereotypical characters of psychological thrillers, such as criminals, stalkers, convicts, such as the psychological thriller film Identity, made in 2003, police officers or detectives and serial killers, both with the film The Bone Collector, innocent victims, vulnerable women, and the majority of the time the dangerous protagonist is male. Common themes of a psychological thriller are mental psychological problems, reality, death, guilt, such as the films Shutter Island and The Machinist, obsession, such as the films Black Swan, Take Shelter and Zodiac. We tried to use as many of the conventions as we could so that we were clearly illustrating our psychological thriller genre. We decided to use a male protagonist as I found that the majority of psychological thrillers I looked at included a male protagonist. We tried to create some mystery with the beginning shot of the boot shutting, which would make our audiences question the relevance of the shot and why it was put at the beginning. We also added mystery with the shot of the empty taxi. Our title, When the Bough Breaks, was taken from the children's nursery rhyme Rockabye Baby. I found that some of the psychological thrillers I looked at sometimes included a children's nursery rhyme song, which also made the link to some elements of the horror genre. This is why we chose this title. Finally, we decided that throughout the opening we would only see the protagonist, which keeps to the convention of following one main character. Here is our film synopsis, which explains what our film would become if it was to be made into a feature-length film. Our film would heavily follow the taxi driver, as seen in the opening, and would include lots of suspense and mystery. We would include some elements of the horror genre, which would add suspense elements to our film. We took our inspiration for our opening from the film The Bone Collector, with the idea of the taxi driver and the fact that you never see the driver. We flipped this around and made it so that we never saw the passenger, which was our own twist on the movie. We also took our inspiration from the film Taken, as we love the elements of suspense it created throughout. How we challenged the conventions. We used the song It's Not For Me To Say by Johnny Mathis. As it is quite a romantic song, it is not what you would expect to find in a psychological thriller. We also used the sound effect of a baby crying. We knew this would push the boundaries and would make our media product stand out and shock our audiences. Typically, of a psychological thriller, the protagonist is very obvious and expected. However, we wanted to create the family man persona, which would subvert the stereotype of the typical protagonist you would find in a psychological thriller. We filmed our opening during the day and in the daylight, which is different to the conventions of a typical psychological thriller, as they tend to use dark lighting.